Hello out there to anyone who's watching this. I wanted to discuss today Milo Yiannopolous' appearance on Bill Maher's program. The date was 17th of February 2017, and I can imagine it's going to be a pretty controversial appearance. It's already controversial given that people had pulled out of it just based on Milo's appearance, and there's all sorts of clashes with the left saying he shouldn't have him on, he shouldn't give him a platform for his hate speech, and there's always controversy surrounding Milo Yiannopolous. So I'm going to talk about it because there was controversy. And what I want to discuss is Milo, and particularly his exchange with Larry Wilmore. Now, I'll start off right off the bat and say that I thought Larry Wilmore was fantastic on this episode, and he was a fantastic representative of, I guess, my values and what I think about this issue. And I guess those are leftist values that would be classified as, and it's a real shame that it's a 10-minute segment, and I'm probably going to talk about it for more than 10 minutes right now just discussing this, because this is an incredibly complex issue. It has a lot of grey involved, there's all kinds of emotions and social perceptions involved, and so I just want to talk about some things briefly. First and foremost, I want to talk about the uncontroversial fact presented by Milo, and that fact is that transgender people disproportionately commit sex crimes. So Bill Maher, the audience, everybody seemed bemused at this claim, and I guess it's one of the advantages of a live debate in that these claims can't be checked in real time. So I checked them, and the one long-term study into transgender people took place in Sweden, and I will link it below, showed that male to female transgender people commit violent crimes. I believe it's classified as violent crimes, but they are involved in criminality at no greater rate than men, but at a higher rate than women. So already right off the bat, this shows that this is not disproportionate. It is at no more than men. But this is something that people who, I guess they're on the right, but people who are opposed to trans women using female bathrooms trot out this statistic as a great reason as to why trans women should not be allowed to use women's bathrooms and trans men should not be allowed to use men's bathrooms. So I'm going to talk about that later, but we'll give Mara we might give him the benefit, maybe we'll give him the benefit of the doubt here that he misspoke, because that is certainly not an uncontroversial statistic. So my thoughts on this statistic, and people using it as an argument for why male to female people can't use female bathrooms, because that will increase the risk of violence towards women in bathrooms, is 3 or 4 points here. First, we need to look at the statistics, and within the study we don't see where the crimes are being committed, what types of crimes are being committed, and who the crimes are being committed against. So this is something, and obviously that's a very valid worry. Will it increase the instances of violence against women? So that's something that should be studied. It should be investigated. Are these crimes being committed against women? Disproportionately, perhaps. Are they being committed in bathrooms? Well, we have a statistic regarding that, and I will link the article below so you can fact check this. So I'm not the ultimate supreme fact checker, but the article I found below shows that there have been 0 recorded instances of sexual abuse and assault by transgender people in bathrooms in history. So 0 recorded instances. And there haven't even been instances of in countries where, or in countries or in places where these things take place, of what so many people are afraid of, and that is men dressing as women and claiming they're transgender to get away with these crimes. So all of that is based on nothing. It's purely fear conjured up in people's imaginations. So the next thought I have is what people don't reference, and it is in that same article, is that female to male transgender people commit crimes at the same rate as men. So, and not at women. So if we were to switch here, let's say we don't want more violent people in female bathrooms, but and they're saying these people are so violent. Well, then what's going to be the difference then if they make a switch? So I guess that's a very minor point, but yeah, those are just interesting thoughts I had, and why I'm kind of against those arguments. So again, it's entirely possible that Milo misspoke, but given his outspokenness on this issue, and how much of an expert I guess he would portray himself as, he's basically a poster boy for this issue. That's not a mistake he should have made. But what we can say, and is statistically supported, is that, and what transgender people are disproportionately involved in when it comes to crime, is being the victim of sexual assault, of sexual abuse and of assault. And I'll post a link to that below, of an article discussing exactly that. So that's the fear on the left, is that when you're forcing people to use bathrooms that they don't associate with, that then they might be exposed to greater rates of crime. So I probably should have looked that up before this video, but I have not seen if there have been instances of people sexually assaulting transgender people in bathrooms. My guess is that there has been. Feel free to please look that up and make a comment about it. But at the very least, we know that those people, trans folk, are much more likely to be the victims of crime. So once again, this is an incredibly complex debate, the transgender bathroom debate. I guess my ideal would be this beautiful leftist ideal of non-gendered bathrooms. As it is, I believe that people should be able to use bathrooms of the gender that they associate with. But I understand that non-gender bathrooms might be some pie-in-the-sky ideal. It might not be socially palatable, and there is always, I guess, there is a chance of increased violence, and so that sort of stuff should be studied before implemented. But there are already places where there are non-gendered bathrooms in workspaces and all these kinds of things, so I don't know if there's been any kind of issue with that in the past. Gendered bathrooms might be a relic of past societies. It might not actually make people safer. I'm not entirely sure about that. That's not the point of the video. So what I want to talk about next is that there was a great part of the debate where Milo exposed his attitude towards transgenderism as that transgender people have a mental illness. It's a mental disorder. And Larry Wilmore refuted that claim, saying that's the exact same thing people said about homosexuals and homosexuality in the past, that this is a mental disorder and that these people should not be allowed to associate with normal people in normal ways. And that's the same way that people, I guess you would say, I wanted to generalize the right, but I would say that people disproportionately on the right have this attitude. And then that is that this is a mental disorder. So, and Larry Wilmore, in making his point that this is the same attitude towards homosexuals in the past, and by some people still today, Milo actually agreed to this, he seemingly agreed to this, in the claim that homosexuality is a mental disorder. So, what is really interesting, and it didn't really get expounded upon in this interview, but I will link to it below, is in a Joe Rogan podcast discussing homosexuality. Milo Yiannopolous, in all but admitting to the label, basically admitted to being a self-loathing homosexual. So I'll stress, he did not admit to the label. Joe Rogan repeatedly accused him of being a self-loathing homosexual, and he said, no, I'm not, no, I'm not, no, I'm not. But the words he used and the attitude he had exposed himself as a self-loathing homosexual. He even admitted that he would, if one was available, he would take a pill that would make him heterosexual. And he didn't really give a good answer as to why. He just said he would be a fantastic heterosexual, I believe. So watch the video for yourself, please. There are two things I want to say about this. One is that he very obviously wanted to say that heterosexual people have an advantage, have a privilege in society, but he did not say that. So I don't know Milo Yiannopolous that well. I understand that a lot of people who follow him have the attitude that privilege doesn't exist, or if it does exist, it's something not to really be concerned with, because there's so many different types of privilege, and white privilege and male privilege and these things, and straight privilege, that they're not really worth being concerned about. So I don't know if that's Milo's position, but I feel as though he didn't want to admit to that there. The other thing we can say about this is that, sorry to cover my mouth, is that I think his attitudes on transgenderism and homosexuality, I guess we can just say sexuality, and probably another wide array of issues, they look to me to be very influenced by his religiosity. And it almost has a kind of Platonic essentialism to it. This idea that there is an innate quality to everything. That certain things have an innate quality that make them what they are. So God created man, God created a woman, they're in his image, and the way he made them is the way they are. And if you're not a man, so if you were born with a penis, then you were a man, and you should be heterosexual, and this is the way things are. And it seems to be ignoring the possibility of a spectrum, of a gender spectrum, of a sexuality spectrum, of these things being flux, of these things being fluid. And every advance we've made, all the progress we've made in academia, studying these things. So it's really interesting, and I think a lot of people sort of have this position. And I've spoken to conservatives in the past who are like, they would say to me, do you really believe this thing that someone is born a man but they actually think they're a woman? Like, it's not that. A lot of the time, I think these people, it's not that they want to be bigoted, it's that they see this person as a man. They don't understand, and I guess it's kind of like the abortion debate, in that religion, their belief that once insemination has occurred, that is a baby. It's not that these people want to control women's bodies. Yes, the decision that they're making and the system that they're engaging in effectively by design does control women's bodies and their right to choose and their autonomy. But what they really believe in is that this is a child, and it is vulnerable, and it needs to be protected. And I think that's informed by their religiosity. And in this debate, I think it's informed by that as well. There's a kind of essentialism to it. They think this is a man, and they're confused by this idea that, there might be much more subtlety to gender, that people might not fit into this these dimorphic categories. Male, female, that's how it is. Anyone who's ever been friends with or spoken with or spent time, with transgender people, just talk to them and ask about their experience in life, and you'll see everything is much more complicated. They are probably the most maligned and marginalized people in our society. They're extremely vulnerable, and we can't continue with policies, in my opinion, that continue to marginalize them. So yeah, that's my opinion on the exchange between Milo Yiannopolous. I don't think he's a bad person, or at least not from this exchange. But I do disagree with him, and I do think that his attitudes and beliefs are bad. And bravo to Larry Wilmore, and I mean, less so the other people on the panel. I thought he was the most articulate and the most sober in making his points. And it was a really interesting segment. So I hope everyone watches it. It should be watched. If you have any comments, post them down below. Let me know what you think. Thank you.